there we go.
Okay. Is that helpful? Do you want me to read the names?
I can run it down. I just didn't have the list in front of me, so that's helpful. All right, so I am Kate Diaz, and I am present. Christy Patima.
Here and present.
And Jason Rojas.
Hi, everybody, I'm here.
Patrice McCarthy.
Here.
Garrett Moran.
Here.
Dan O'Keefe.
He's not coming. We have a catch up with him scheduled afterwards.
That's right. Yep. Michael Passero.
I
Fran
am
Rubino.
here.
Oh,
I am
good.
here. Thank you. Sorry, I had a little trouble finding the link.
Hey, you made it. That's what counts. Fran Rabinowitz.
Here.
And Jen Widnes. All right, so the team is present and accounted for. So I'm just going to say thank you for everybody for making the time for us today. Chris and Jason and Amy and I met to sort of debrief on the work of the commission, our particular aspects. And we realized that we have a pretty aggressive timeline in terms of trying to figure out how to move the agenda forward. And in doing that, we figured if we could meet today to just sort of lay our expectations out and what our role within the scope of all of the work is, that we could hopefully get us in a place where we'd be able to meet our deadlines, I think, with any hope. How's that? Because it's a pretty aggressive timeline. And I know that many of us were together at the first convening. I think, if I'm correct, Patrice, you were the only person who was not able to make it. So do you want to say hi and tell everybody who you are?
Sure. My excuse was we had a long planned family vacation in Europe. So I was thinking of you, and I have listened to the entire recording of your first meeting. I'm Patrice McCarthy. I'm the Executive Director and General Counsel for the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. And I've been doing this work on behalf of CABE for several decades.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you're here. And if we want to do a quick round robin, we did the people that are on the list, but Amy, we have a couple of other people with us today. Do we want to share who's with us?
Sure. I'm going to have to ask them to introduce themselves.
Can we take down the PowerPoint maybe for this part?
Yes, definitely. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay, so I see Rachel.
Hi, folks. My name is Rachel Leventhal-Weiner. I lead research and evaluation on the data and policy analytics team at OPM, and I'm here to listen in today. Thanks.
Thank you. Kate, maybe? Or is it
Hi.
Katie? I'm sorry.
No worries. I respond to both. I'm Katie Breslin. I'm the data governance coordinator, also on the data and policy analytics team, and I oversee our data link CT longitudinal data system.
Joe?
Hello, everyone. Joe Perkis. I'm the legislative liaison at OWS.
Okay, and I think also Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone. Laura Baker. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for OWS.
And just to round out, I'm Amy Orenstein. For those of you who I haven't met, I am part of the Social Impact Partners team, and we're just supporting the Commission's work and facilitation and research. So happy to meet all of you and happy to help in any way I can. So thank you for joining.
All right. Well, I appreciate, again, that everybody made the time to be here. And in the spirit of moving us, Amy, do you want to throw the PowerPoint back up?
Definitely. Sorry, give me a quick second.
No, that's all right. It's nice to see people's faces, so quite frankly. Our plan today is really to kind of run through the scope of work, the deliverables. We had a good chunk of conversation about vision and how that's going to play into sort of the approach to the work. And then sort of what is the research plan and how we're going to progress the work. So I'm going to just kick us off with a little bit of the project outline, so deliverables and what we're going to be expected to do. So this is one of the things that's going to be fun, is by June 25th, we're going to take sort of a lay of the land, get some information in terms of what is the current situation with respect to the area that we're responsible for, which is policy funding and the data systems, analytics, that component. So the different work groups have different responsibilities. Ours is really the capstone group, so we are the most important. Not saying that the others aren't important, but I'm just saying that without us, the other groups are just talking. So it will be our responsibility to figure out, one, the lay of the land with respect to the information that's accessible and manageable and out there, and the systems within which we're working, and to kind of lay that in sort of what is existing by October 1st. So that's a pretty ambitious goal for the June 25th, which is why we wanted to convene today, to kind of give us a jump start on where we should direct, and do we have the greatest hits of what is out there? Because one of the things that we have great agreement on is that there's a lot of stuff, but it's not necessarily organized in a way that's helpful. And so we want to make sure not to miss any important pockets of information. And that's one of the things we really want feedback from this team on. Our next deliverable is October 1st, which is the draft recommendations. So we are going to see from a lot of the different commissions and their different pieces what they're going to kind of target for interest. And then we're going to layer into that by October 20th. What are the state level changes, the things that we're going to anticipate that we might need alterations or kind of considerations in terms of policy funding systems, and again, the accountability metrics. How will we know we've been successful? And so that's about how do we activate the other proposals? How do we actually turn these recommendations into action? And so for us, there's going to be a little bit of visioning work based on what we hope these systems and a more systematic approach to implementing a career pathways model, whatever that model is. So we're doing a little bit of anticipation work, which I think is okay, but then we're going to have to kind of package it all for the down the road. So we have a pretty ambitious guidelines and timelines that we're trying to meet. And so there will have to be, I think, some out of committee work that gets done. But that's going to take a little bit of effort. And so at this moment, that's our launch pad. Amy, do you want to move to the next slide for me?
Sure.
I think it's, yeah.
Yep.
So in terms of how we're going to manage this, from this kind of entry point, we're looking at the baseline. Where are we at? Trying to come up with, if this is the data as we have it today, what might be a better vision? And we've started having that conversation statewide with the P20 commission and that kind of concept, like what is the world of data in education look like, and is there ways to consolidate it? But I think the vision of this is probably even broader than that in terms of layering in what are the workforce initiatives, where are those things layered in, what are the incentives, the programs that allow for that workforce development work. And then we do need to have a little bit of a vision, like if this is what we have today, what would work better for us tomorrow? And then identifying some of the barriers. And that's some of our work that we're trying to get into for the 25th is, in an ideal world, this would exist. What's in our way to making that happen? And it could be statutory changes. It could be fiscal. It could be organizational challenges that we know. We certainly had that conversation with the when we were talking about the nonprofit sector, that there's interesting challenges to getting that as a consolidated effort. So I think we know that there's some barriers we can anticipate and some that we'll probably have to work through as we kind of put our ideal vision in terms of that systematic approach.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Can I just make one quick comment? That the goal of the overall commission on June 25th is to level set. And so there's so much good work going on across the state. and just basically bring everybody on the commission up to date on what the current state looks like. So this, what we're doing is, like Kate said, funding policy and data, but there's a lot of other current state work being done by the other work streams.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Amy, because I think having an understanding of what our workflow is in between those meetings and what we're expected to kind of do at those full convenings, I think is going to be really critical, so that we don't try and overshoot the mark to some extent and try and get everything done by June 25th. Fran, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, honestly, it is incredibly ambitious. How do you intend to get all that research into what is going on? I'm assuming you're talking K-12 and workforce, all of that data. How will you amass all that by the 25th?
Go ahead, Kate.
I think that's our job is to identify sources. And I think that's part of what the partnership with Amy and her team really is, as well as with other, government. We're not expecting you to do it, Fran, if that's helpful.
No,
or me.
I'll just add two comments to that. I think that this visual is not the best because it looks like current state, future state, and barriers are all equal. And really the bulk of what we're doing is taking an inventory of what's in place today. So I'm happy to drive that from a research and capturing, but it will basically be going out to experts in the state and asking them, which is the second half of this meeting. We're going to talk about kind of the research plan. And I would say that we will fully disclose. I do not think by June 25th, we're going to get to like the lowest level of detail, but to level set and make sure people understand at the highest level what is already happening.
Okay, that's really helpful because TAPS is working with Miguel, sort of parallel to this. And, we've taken, almost 6 months to level set, to figure out what is available, in school districts and what we want to, stand up as best practice. So just, that's why I was taken back.
Yeah, I think, we don't want to overshoot. I appreciate that I think there's a lot out there we do and a lot we don't know. And I think that's the concern, is trying to capture the pockets of knowledge. Because I think that, I can speak for myself, but I feel like there's more things that I'm even aware of. And I think getting a sense of what's out there is a really important goal, because we can't build something if we don't even know what exists today.
Exactly. How do you level up if you don't know what you have?
Do you want me to
But
go?
I just also want to say this. I also think, though, in the spirit of moving the conversation, we may have to act on what we know and adjust as more information becomes available, right? There may be things that we don't anticipate that come up and we go, oh, we didn't know that when we made this decision. We have to take it into account. So I don't want us to stall until we think we have everything that's possibly out there.
Good. I love it. Good idea. Thank you.
Kate, are you ready for me to go to the next slide?
Yes. Is it me or is it somebody else? Oh, okay. There we go. I wasn't sure which one was next. So this is our working definition, to make sure that when we are talking about this, we're all talking about the same thing, because it's, when we talk about workforce and pathways, it often has some, I think, interpretive balance to it. What our own experience might feed that. So this is going to be our working definition, which I think, I'm not big on reading to readers. So I think if there's a question about it, or there's something you think we're missing that we need to consider, by all means, pass that along. But I think by and large, it just, I think, speaks to the work that we know we should be doing. I don't know if there's anybody who has comment on it.
I think it will be important to just have a shared definition as we start to talk about some of the research. So that's why we wanted to include it. If not, we can go to the next section, which I think we are Jason's doing, right?
I believe so. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm going to at least try to, or pretend to, right? Because right off the bat, we obviously have a really great working group of experienced people. And part of our goal at the outset, knowing the time constraints that we have and the job that we have to do, is trying to come up for a vision that's realistic, I think, that'll help us kind of, dig through the mountains, I think, of resources out there. When we met last week, I think I used the word fragmentation, and it seems that we have all sorts of pieces to create a workforce that would fit the definition that we just reviewed, but we know we're not there yet because there's lots of people doing lots of work across the state. And, I don't imagine that at the end of this we'll make that any more sane. But if there are opportunities for us to make it a bit more saner, to allow us to reach the goals that we set for ourselves, to be able to utilize limited resources in a far more efficient and effective way, and that result in the outcomes that we're looking for, I think we will have contributed something positive to this conversation that we're having around workforce. So we just have a blank slate here because I don't know if anybody's aware of a vision that we have for workforce development. We know we have all the separate components, and maybe the vision is as simple as bringing all those components together. But if that were the case, we'd probably already have it. So what we really want to do was just provide an opportunity at the outset of the meeting for people from where you sit, the seat that you occupy, at least sharing your thoughts about a vision, to the extent that you can articulate one fairly quickly, only because we have 40 minutes left in this meeting, about what a workforce system would look like that would allow us to meet the actual definition that we just reviewed on the previous slide. And Amy, let me know if I've set that up correctly or not, since I volunteered to do this last night. So.
Yeah, I think it's just that this is the only thing I would add to that is the vision of our work stream, as opposed to
Right.
all the other work.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So knowing what we know about the timeline, and knowing what we know, each of us know about the issue that we're grappling with, what are your guys' individual visions for developing a work stream that allows us to achieve some goals here?
If I could.
People, so. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me? This is Garrett.
Yeah, could you take down the slide again, if you could?
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm just trying to imagine how this work does get done. We've got other groups are doing things on work-based learning and career-connected education and so forth, and ours is all interlaced and sort of derivative in the sense of data policy funding. So seems like we have to be working in an integrated way with all those other groups. So for example, if someone says in the workforce, let's say the work-based learning group says, well, there are 6 states that are really exemplars. Once they've done the analysis of Connecticut, there are 6 states that have really been exemplars. We'll want to look at their policies and their funding machine and their, all the data that they use to track and hold people accountable, to develop what our vision for our components of it might be. We shouldn't be doing that work in isolation from those groups, because we'll be too scattered. But the same would be true in each of these categories. So to me, a part of the trick here is assuming that that's a good assumption. How do we organize the work? It seems like we need to be deputizing people to be partners with those groups who will happily have us chase down policy, data, et cetera.
And I can add a little bit of color to that, but Garrett's point is a very big one, that the integrated work and the cross-pollination of all these work streams is going to be essential. So certainly the SIP team and the commission meetings are going to be vehicles to do that, but it is a major thing that we're coordinating and thinking about. There's also some sequencing in that. I think that the other streams are going to develop their recommendations earlier than we will, so we can be kind of building our thoughts and perspective as they roll out their design of what some of the other elements of the pathway should look like. Ben, it looks like Ben has a comment.
Yeah, I'd also like to note that all working group meetings are public meetings and anyone can join them, and they'll be posted on the OWS website. So if anyone from this group wants to hop in another working group meeting, they are absolutely welcome to.
So Amy, oh, well, go ahead, Fran.
I'm happy to hear Garrett say we have to look at other states, because my vision is we don't need to start from scratch. Yes, we do need to figure out what we have in Connecticut, but we don't have to figure out how to do this. We can, sometimes Connecticut thinks they have to do their own thing, in their own way. And I would say there are many states that have it. I think my vision is that some of the pockets of excellence that exist for kids to have career exploration through internships, micro-credentials, whatever it is, I want to see exist for all kids. And I want the policies and the funding to direct that.
Amy, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that I'm wondering, Garrett, if what you were thinking is that the job of this work stream, or the vision, which what we're talking about, is really to, I don't know if the word is enable or uplift, but like enable or uplift the vision of the other work streams in terms of the design of what a career pathway, what the dual enrollment or the advising or the any other component of it should look like.
Yeah, I mean, if I were organizing everything, I think I would be saying, let's make sure we're in touch with the heads of each of these other committees and find out what those states are and programs. And then we can figure out in parallel what the data policy and funding questions are. Some of these things will, like a funding model might exist in other states that is, it may not be the state that's got the best work-based learning program or the best training program. So there are things that will not necessarily fall out of the other group's works, but most of it will. So if there's a good work-based learning or a good dual enrollment thing, they're going to have funding mousetraps. So I think we just need to have a view, be ready when they're ready. The policy stuff seems to me is going to come out at the end once everyone figures out what they want to do. That's, I think, in early childhood, I think that's sort of how it, in the Blue Ribbon Commission, I think that's how that worked. We just got to stay flexible and try to be helpful is sort of the way I think about it in the early stage. And then later we got to really crunch, get specific and come up with things.
Here, Kate.
So I do think, Garrett, I agree with you. I think one of the tenets of our vision has to be flexibility. And I think in terms of visioning what the system looks like, I think we can have some characteristics of it, right? I think we know that what we want to see is something that's comprehensive, that's creates as much of a one-stop opportunity for people who want to engage in this work as possible, so that we don't have fractured systems at the end game. And I couldn't agree more that I don't know what that system's going to look like, because we don't have the pieces that are being kind of offered in this as for what the outcomes will be. But I do think it's important to put up front that we really do want a comprehensive system that is easy for people to navigate, that kind of brings all the different aspects of this work together, so that when we talk about implementation, it's as easy for a small district with 36 teachers and one administrator. It's easy for them to implement as it is for Stanford to implement, with a broad base of 1,500 teachers and a huge administrative contingent. So I think for us, I think that idea that this is accessible for every child is an important tenet in terms of building systems, because that means that we are going to have to build something that is accessible for all of those people. And I think having that kind of component of the vision up front, I do think helps guide the pivots we're going to have to make as these ideas emerge.
It occurs to me that if you think about the other work groups in terms of design and career connected learning and so forth, work-based learning, they'll, in the data category, they'll have dashboards and measures and so forth that they want, but they won't necessarily have to have a view on the overall data infrastructure in the state. So we have things in the state now that are, different departments have different responsibilities. We have different existing data systems. And I think that's something we can work on right now early, before we know what, the work-based learning group wants to do and what their data output will be. But there's some parts that are going to be late because of what they're going to propose. But there's some things that we know, I think, that we can work on right now, like the data. There's just data infrastructure. We could look at it and say, is this going to bring us to the promised land, or should we do something different, or should we put it in a different place? Similarly, the funding, I think there are things that are overarching in other states that we can learn from, that we don't have to wait to figure out what our committees are going to say on their various specialties. But again, there are things in funding that will require that. So part of, I guess, is I'm just thinking out loud as I'm saying this, there are some things that we can put up front, but we don't have to wait for anybody else, where we can learn and look at the comparables and come up with a point of view. And then there are other parts of it that we'll have to wait until their work is closer to being done.
And I think some of those things that you're saying that we can get started on will be more obvious to us after we complete the current state. Do you agree with that?
I think some of it's sort of obvious now. Data, for example, all these activities in the state now generate data, and it's available in different places, and we can figure out quickly what we think qualitatively is happening. For data systems in states very often end up being compliance vehicles as opposed to being useful tools to citizens or useful tools to managers at the state level, for example. We can have a point of view on what state of in that hierarchy we exist and whether that's acceptable. That we don't, maybe the team that's working on the current state is doing that assessment. But if they are, it should include our group. In other words, there shouldn't be a separate group working on understanding all the data.
No, that is our group. It is our group. We're just getting started. And
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, maybe you're already ahead of me on this, but
no, I don't.
Somebody said there's a hell of a lot to do. So the question is, what can we do most productively, early, and often?
Hi, Garrett. It's nice to see you. I'm sorry that I'm late to this meeting. I had another meeting with a funder that popped up that we needed to clarify some information for. So jumping in a little bit late, but if you could give me like just a second of a context, that would be really helpful.
Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, Kelly, are you looking for an update on where we are in the meeting, or something Garrett was specifically talking about when you jumped in?
Where we're at, like in the context of the meeting. So I'm very sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. We just, my co-liaisons had kicked us off with a project overview and some definitions. And then we were talking about what the vision is for this group. This is the Data Policy and Funding Group.
Okay.
And it kind of led into a discussion about how our work is dependent largely on what comes out of the other work streams. But what Garrett was saying when you joined is that there's also kind of some known things that we could start digging into sooner rather than later. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I've
Thank you very much for that. That's perfect.
Yeah,
that's perfect. Thank you.
Jenna has her hand up, Amy, too.
Yeah.
Jen.
Just wanted to build off, and I think it might have been Fran, what she said, and just, what we're worried about in higher ed is just like the lack of coordination also. This state is just so siloed. So I would just charge the group to not be afraid to create some infrastructure that's statewide that might be new. And some folks here are afraid of bigger government, but like we can't implement what Kate's envisioning without like more infrastructure to help school districts and higher ed do what needs to be done. And, I think that's what other states have, the end. Like there's coordinating boards, there's more robust state departments of ed that do this work, that we just don't have that built in anywhere right now. And Kelly's been trying to do it with a really lean staff, but it really needs to be in like a big place that has the right resources to support our 169 towns and school districts to do some of this work. And even to your point, Garrett, around data, like I'm on the board of Data Link, Kelly's on that board as well. Like we're doing it, and Rachel and Katie are doing it as well, but it is still somewhat siloed, I think, to your point, Garrett, and it's hard to get the big things done. But SDE is actually doing some really incredible work around connecting K-12 and employment outcomes. That's just kind of sitting quietly over there. So I think there's actually a lot, Garrett, that you might not know about that's happening.
Oh, for sure.
And we share data with SDE on dual credit outcomes. So they have a ton of data that we might just need to situate a little bit better and leverage resources like the National Student Clearinghouse to do some more consistent reporting to advise some of this work. So I just would follow up from what Fran said to say, like, if everyone needs to have access to the same resources, we need to have an infrastructure in place to facilitate that.
And I'll just add to Jen's comments. So DataLink CT is a really amazing resource that we have in Connecticut. I think two things: they're under-resourced. I think they need more support. And I think fundamentally the partnership with DataLink CT is voluntary of state agencies, and not every state agency is a partner in DataLink CT. So there's a reluctancy from some to actually share data. And then the data sharing agreements to be sorry, I might.
You're back. And you're not. Sorry.
Kind of half back.
Blink twice.
If I want Kelly to be able to finish if she comes back, but if not, I think some of what we're talking about might be, the next few slides are laying out the things we want to know, and some of what you're saying would fit nicely in that discussion. I don't know, Jason, if you feel like we want to talk more about vision, or we want to capture some of those tenets and come back.
Yeah, I was just waiting to see if Kelly was back, but she is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's something going on with my internet, so I turned my camera off at the suggestion of the system. We need stronger requirements for data sharing, and minimum amounts of data that we do share, with a common dictionary of what those are and how we collect them. So for example, something as simple as demographic information could be collected 10 different ways across 10 different agencies. And so being able to coordinate all of that once it comes into DataLink CT can be just problematic just of itself, and something that should be so easy. But there are things that we need information that we need from other agencies to really do our work robustly. And we can't always access that information. And so making sure that there's requirements for data that's shared, how it's shared, and where it's shared, and then the ability for the DataLink CT to have the resources, whether it's technology and people, to actually be able to do the research and produce the reports. For example, the career pathway report that was done last year, it took, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years to get the report, and it was based on data that was several years, that was looking backwards at the year you collected it.
The request took time to develop. The data were pulled at least a year before we were able to do the analysis, and a lot of that has to do with shifting staffing issues that we've had on our team and in other places. That's a long time frame, and it's an annual requirement that we're already working towards replicating now. But I would say that is a long time frame, and that's true. We don't like knowing that it took that long, but we do have frameworks in place now to make the sharing and agreements move more swiftly. And knowing what time frame we're working on, if it's annual, quarterly, something like that, will also helps us know, how swiftly we have to move.
And I'm not being critical of DataLink CT at all. I'm just highlighting the fact that they do great work and they need more resources to do more.
That is accurate. Thank you.
Jason, it seems there's a good list of verbs that the group has come up with. I mean, if we take them down, that, you know, to the earlier point, the rest of the pillars are kind of the noun, right? And we're the verb that puts those other pillars into action. So, you know, a bunch of people mentioned integrated, unified, seamlessly connected, resourced is a big one, equitable access, measurable outcomes. I think if we kind of take those words, Amy, as the verbs of the mission, we have a good foundation, Jason, to kind of go off on and cultivate that with the rest of the other three pillars, if that makes sense to everybody.
No, Chris, thank you. That I've been writing them down too: flexibility, comprehensive, accessible. But and if folks have heard other verbs that weren't mentioned just now, you can certainly send them in to Amy so that she has them. But I wrote some down and I'll email them in as well too. But knowing we have about 20 minutes left, Amy, I don't know if you want to pivot right now to the research.
I would love to, because there's so much knowledge on this call, and I would like to get people's feedback on what we're going to actually look into in the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to screen share again. And so I'm going to start with the funding stream. This is kind of the list that I've put together so far on what I think we need to understand, and some questions that I would ask. But what I would really like is from all of you, what's not on here, or what would you look at, or what would you want to know about funding? And down at the bottom, I did, you know, what the initial scan, some of the sources of funding that we've come up with, that I would, you know, aspire to elaborate on in whatever we bring into the current state. But I just listed them there so that you knew that, you know, we at least knew of those. As I should just say, what I'm hoping is that over the next 2 weeks, we can do both some secondary research and some interviewing, and really like pull together a summary of what funding looks like for career pathways. And since career pathway is not completely defined, we'll have to be a little bit holistic in our thinking of funding.
Would this include sort of incentives? So I'm thinking, in other words, if we had a work-based learning system where we were incentivizing businesses in some way, there'd be funding, but there'd also be an incentive structure that would make that more or less effective. Some of these things have it already, right? We have things that are funded by the state or federal government, where companies, for example, would be expected to come up with a portion. But I assume our work here is both the funding and the related incentive structure we're trying to get.
Yes, Garrett. Yeah, we should specify. So for sure, if there are incentive structures that support career pathways, we should understand those as well. Does anyone look at this and say, like, wow, you forgot like the biggest thing, or, you know, these are the big things? If you don't have it in front of you right now, we're planning to send out the slides, and you'd be welcome to add or comment after the meeting. I just want to get started in the right, on the right path. And I also want to ask if anyone has specific suggestions in terms of interviews or people that would help us understand this. Okay.
Amy, I raised my hand. You could.
Oh, I'm sorry. My computer's
That's all
doing
right.
this thing where I'm looking only at my share. So if someone else could see.
And Kelly has
Jason
her
and then Kelly.
too. Yeah. I just had one question, and I would defer to the K-12 folks on here. But I think a lot about adult education. I think it's primarily locally funded with some support from the state, but I don't know if that should be on here or that we should be paying more attention to it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
There is
Because we have state and
funding
federal, but we
for-
don't have local. Right, so.
Yeah, yeah, but there is also funding at the local level for, depending on which school district you're in. Yes.
That's a good point. So there is adult ed funding comes through WIOA and goes to the State Department of Education, and then there's other funding sources. I would take a look at the budget and look under Department of Labor. There's a whole list of earmarks that go to the Department of Labor for job training programs across the spectrum. That also includes the summer youth program funding that the state provides. And I noticed here you say more funding that is more general but could support CP jobs. Summer jobs is CP Capital Workforce Partners?
No, I'm sorry, career pathways, but
Career
so
pathways. Okay.
like, for example, we just were meeting with people that did some of this work in New York City, and they, as part of getting every student work-based learning, they're using the summer jobs program in the city, which is basically funded through a separate stream, but is providing summer jobs to a portion of the students. So it's kind of looking for other funding sources that may achieve the goals that we want to achieve on our career pathway.
Yeah, that's exactly, what we've been trying to work on is getting the boards to align those summer youth dollars to those important internships. But the legislation also passed this summer that appoints a career navigator, work-based learning navigator to each of the 5 regional workforce boards, and funding to do that. It just passed. Implementation hasn't happened yet, but there is a real opportunity for us to collaborate with the 5 regional workforce boards on how we could go ahead and support those work-based learning navigators.
Okay, I might come back to you for some more on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ben's got his hand up, Amy. Ben's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ben, go ahead.
I just want to make a quick point. This kind of leads to goes back to what Garrett was saying about things this working group could move on now, even while other groups haven't made their recommendations yet. We were talking to folks from Delaware who were in this position 10 years ago when they went out and they were starting their scan. And they literally did a funding crosswalk of available funds that are coming into the state every year. The amounts, where they were used, and that really helped them say, okay, with the existing funding, here's what we can do. They laid out the future state of what they wanted to do with career pathways, and it was then very easy for them to go to the legislature and say, here's how many more dollars we need to get where we want to go, and also go to philanthropy. So they really came from the perspective of, we're not going to ask for new dollars until we understand where all the existing dollars are going. So just a thought for this group on things, a potential output and something that you all could probably move on now.
I mean, part of that, Ben, and this may be obvious, is that what are you repurposing? In other words, there are flows going to adult education, for example, that you might want to use very differently from how they're used now. I guess that's obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, I'm gonna go to the next research path. But if people have thoughts, please just send them to me, and I definitely will probably be researching or reaching out offline. So the next section of our scope is data. And this is kind of the questions that I have come up with to date around data. Really understanding how across the educational pathway and career data is collected and connected today. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I know that starting with data link CT is one of our biggest things, and EdSite. But are there other suggestions for where data might sit today that we would want to bring into this project? Is it Jen?
Yes, Jen.
I would just add the National Student Clearinghouse, because I just think it's an underutilized resource right now. And they're actually working to connect with workforce, employment outcomes and for workforce Pell purposes. So Amy, it's just something that we should probably talk to the State Department of Ed about, because I think it will help on the challenges that DataLink has. Yes, we can fund DataLink, but also there's a lot of existing data through the National Student Clearinghouse that the state could be leveraging a little more than they are.
Thank you. Other comments on data? I'm going to move us along because I have 2 more of these slides that.
Amy, I would just say we should set a goal generally for data. Again, as I said, the hierarchy, if you think of compliance being the lowest level, et cetera, going up to a real managerial tool. In many cases, we have a lot of data and we don't have it positioned to be useful in those higher level ways.
I completely agree. I was thinking that would come into the vision, the descriptors of the vision, but yes. Policy. Similar outline here of what I'm suggesting we start to pull together.
Jen and Kate would know better than me on this one, Amy, but articulation agreements, would they be covered under these? Maybe the policy dual enrollment credit transfer?
Yeah, that would encompass that as far as I read it anyway.
Okay.
Is there any, I know there's not any one person, but is there any sources of expertise or people that you would say would have good perspective on how the policy is influencing our ability to deliver career pathways today that are not on this work group that we should bring in to talk to?
I would wonder if there's a group of superintendents who are people who have to think about this. And it may be, we want to, and Fran, you'll probably have to help us identify, but we talk a lot about Danbury and the work that Kara's doing, but there's also got to be somebody out there who's wanted to do work and had problems and found barriers. So
yes,
that might be helpful.
And we can, yeah, I think that would be helpful because I do hear about barriers, labor department challenges, etc., that they have run into. So sure, we can bring. I can.
It's even a focus group. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Amy,
I'm sorry.
Laura,
Is it Laura?
Yeah, hi everyone. I just was also thinking that there's probably also local groups like your Connecticut Technology and Engineering Associations and probably other types of groups like that are made up of your teachers, which will help identify some of the barriers that they're working on. I think those are the ones that are typically rolling out these types of programs. I know CTEA is one of the ones, IEA chapters and things like that. ITEEA. Sorry, there's a lot of vowels in there. Chapters and other local chapters that I don't know of that probably also run these types of programming in the schools.
Great, thank you.
I have 4 just kind of challenges. One is the block scheduling. Different school systems have different scheduling. It makes it harder to when you don't have block scheduling for like work release programs. We have different towns that are now working together and they're sending students to each other's school districts for career pathways. And I think that's a great model, especially in the smaller districts. But we need to look at the challenges that those school districts have and how do we overcome some of those challenges to ensure that that can happen more robustly. And part of that is the block scheduling and part of it is transportation. We hear transportation is a barrier for students being able to do work release. And also labor laws are challenging and also having organizations understand what they can and can't do with regards to the work-based learning component of career pathways.
I would also say that, maybe it's too granular, but the high school credits, 25 credits, sometimes superintendents look at that as a challenge. And I think we need to, there needs to be more understanding of possible flexibility within those requirements, not having to change the requirements, but find flexibility within them. I also think that, one of the things I hear often, and even from districts that are sharing people, is that, they can have an EMT in the room, but they will also have to have a certified teacher in the room in order for credit to be given. And that is probably something that we'll need to look at in terms of policy.
Ben, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, the one that I keep hearing over and over is certifying instructors for career pathway programs, especially those coming from industry, creating a more seamless path for them to get into the classroom to teach some of these courses.
Thank you. Any other questions on policy or comments? I want to end on time, and this is important. I think as much as we're looking inside Connecticut to a number of your comments earlier, there are a lot of states that have made a lot of progress on career pathways. And these are the ones that I am starting to pull some research together around. Certainly happy to take feedback. With our lens of data policy and funding, these may or may not represent the best ideas, but we're going to start with them and see where we go from there. If others have examples of things happening outside of Connecticut they would like to uplift or add into this, please let me know, or now or later.
One of the things I was thinking about as a kind of way to organize thinking on the policy stuff is, to what extent is the state going to be be directive as opposed to just creating incentives, or just letting, for example, the local choice on dual fund. Let's say we have an increment of funding for credits for dual enrollment. I think the philosophy in the past has been to give the money to the however many districts and let them decide how they want to position it. And a lot of that ends up going to, English credits for AP English credits and stuff like that, which is not the spirit of the Pathways Commission. So how do we think about that philosophically? Or, I mean, there are a lot of I think the consensus in the business world, certainly and in general, is increasingly that young people need durable skills preparedness. And in most places, you can't really get a durable skills course that gets credit. So a lot of that teaching and training gets done in a conspiratorial way. Some places have said, we will have credit-bearing durable skills training. And so if we leave that to be all local, should we do that at the state level? I just raised them. It's kind of I think most places probably have a theme generally that they adhere to. And I think it's useful when you're thinking about things that are happening in other states. Who's been, directive versus laissez-faire at the state level in terms of making the policy?
So looking at how much these other states have kind of centralized or controlled policy at all levels.
Yeah, again, it's how much of it is sort of a dictate in law versus an incentive structure or a clear mandate to the local places. It's going to be different in the blue versus red states, which the unionized versus the non-unionized in a lot of these places. Anyway, it's really just a suggestion for a way to think about things. It's not necessarily the way we should overtly organize our work, but it is. You run into this a lot.
Yeah, but it is a spectrum, and it might be a nice way to kind of categorize other states' work.
Yeah.
Kate?
the only other thing that strikes me might give us some an interesting view of all of this is when Garrett was talking about durable skills, those often come up in the portraits of a graduate that every institution is obligated to have, and every district has kind of crafted in one way. And I think that there's a pretty easy crosswork to develop, because I think that there's in each of those some aspect of that work. It says we understand that students need to be able to do these things as graduates, and so that may be a source of commonality that we might be able to build off of as we contemplate, like, what does this work look like? That those portraits of a graduate are already committed to by the districts, by the boards of ed, and so making them real could be this career pathways work, and so it might be a source of commonality we can work off of.
Thank you. Okay. I think if there's no more feedback on that, we can stop sharing. And we're almost at time. I believe that the next steps that I know of are for us to send out some kind of a written update on where we are with collecting this information next week, and for us all to convene and discuss it the following week. We had put out a request for everyone's availability on the 17th, and it looked like the early morning was best. So I am planning to send out a meeting invite for that time. I believe it was 8 to 9. And hopefully be talking with each of you probably a little bit offline between now and then. Does that make sense? Are there other things that, please, like, just email me, call me, whatever, or send any ideas or suggestions that you have, and we will get started. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you to everyone for your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. See you soon.